Hello, algebra students. In today's lesson, we're going to be working with radical equations. Now, up to this point in Chapter 10, we have been working with radical expressions, and these first 5 problems are review. I'm asking you to do those on your own, and we will check those first thing in class tomorrow. Because in order to be successful at solving radical equations, you need to be sure you can solve radical expressions. Now, what makes the difference between an expression and an equation? I think we all know the answer to that. It's an equal sign. So radical equations are equations, and to be an equation, you have to have an equal sign. So equations that contain a radical. So if you have an equation with a radical, we call that a radical equation. Now, in solving radical equations, sometimes you're going to have extraneous solutions. An extraneous solution is an answer that does not fit the original problem. Now, probably you're asking yourself, if I'm going to do all this work and then I'm going to have an answer that doesn't fit, we've done that before where we have to choose which answer is the appropriate answer, even if we have 2 possible scenarios. So it is very important for you to check your answer with the original. And I know when you're working through your math problems, you want to hurry up and get finished. But I cannot emphasize enough, it is very important for you to check both answers that you get, to check for extraneous solutions. So here is our key concept. If you square both sides of an equation, the resulting equation is still true. Remember, that's the golden rule. Whatever you do to one side of an equation, as long as you do it to the other side, you can do anything you want to one side of the equation as long as you do it to both sides. So realize that why would we want to square both sides of an equation? Well, the reason we want to square both sides of an equation is because to square a number is to cancel the square root. A square cancels the square root. Just like when we were solving quadratic equations and we had x squared and we wanted to unsquare x, we took the square root. Now we have a square root and we want to undo the square root, so we have to square. So squaring both sides will undo the square root. Just be sure you do it to both sides. So for example, if we're looking for the square root of x, we square both sides, and that'll give us that x here, because we undid the square root, equals 16, because the positive square root of 16 is 4. Okay, let's look at some other examples, because we're talking about equations, so they're going to be a little bit longer than just the square root of x equals 4. The first thing I have to do is to isolate my square root. So I need to subtract 6 from both sides. Now I have the square root of x plus 4 equals 8. Now how do I undo the square root? I need to square both sides. Well, when I square both sides, I unsquare root it, and I end up with 64 on the right. So that's easy. We subtract 4 from both sides, and x equals 60. Okay, let's check. When we come over here to check our solution, we say 60 plus 4, take the square root of that and add 6. Does that equal 14? So 60 plus 4 is 64, and the square root of 64 is 8, and 8 plus 6 does equal 14. So it does check out. Copy the whole problem down. Cha-ching. Okay. Moving on to number 2. Unsquare root it. So to unsquare root it, we need to square both sides. All right, this is going to give us 2 minus y equals y squared. Okay, when I have a variable squared, my radical equation has just now turned into a quadratic equation. So let's put it in standard form. Take our y over, make it a positive y, take our 2 over, make it a negative 2. And you have 4 options here of how you want to solve for y. I'm going to see if I can't just factor this real quick. Multiples of 2 that subtract to give me 1. That's easy. That's 2 and 1, and the 1 is positive, so the larger sign gets the positive. A nice little review of factoring. What's going to make y plus 2 equal 0? A negative 2. What is going to make, I don't like how that looked, let's fix that. A negative 2. What's going to make y minus 1 equal 0? A positive 1. So if you are just watching my pen and you're not listening to my voice, well, I'm preaching to the choir, because if you're listening, you know what I just did, how I came up with negative 2 and 1. But I think some of your friends are just watching the video, and therefore they get to this step and they're like, now how did you get negative 2? They didn't hear me say what makes it equal 0. That's the question you ask yourself. Okay, let me get a new color to check so I don't run into my green. So here's my checking column. I have to go back and have to try negative 2. 2 minus, be careful, a negative 2 equals negative 2, because I'm plugging in negative 2 for y. So remember, the original problem was not squared. So it's the square root of 2 minus negative 2 equals negative 2. Well, 2 negatives make a positive, and 2 plus 2 is 4. When I take the square root of 4, I get 2. And 2 does not equal negative 2. So negative 2 is what we call an extraneous solution. Let's make sure that 1 works. I don't want to make any assumptions and not know for sure. So let's do this fun blue. So the square root of 2 minus 1, does that equal 1? Well, yes, that's going to be the square root of 1, and the square root of 1 is 1, and that one checks out. So 1 is our only solution. Okay, pause the video right here and try number 3 without me. That's the best way to check your understanding, is for you to attempt the problem on your own. So try it, pause the video, and I'll come back and work it in just a minute. Why aren't you pausing the video? There I am. I'm in your iPad and I see you not pausing the video. Please pause the video. That was my dog. Did you hear? My dog's even mad at you for not pausing the video. Okay, so we got to square both sides. That's the first thing you need to do. After you square both sides, you get y squared equals 2y plus 3. Another quadratic. Y squared minus 2y minus 3 equals 0. Whoops, all my signs disappeared. Minus, minus. Let's factor real quick. Multiples of 3, that's easy because it's just 3 and 1. That subtract to give us a 2, and the sign is negative. So the larger number is negative, 3 and 1. Subtract to give us negative 2. So my possible zeros here, or possible solutions, are positive 3 and negative 1. So let's check for extraneous solutions. So y, let's put in 3 equals the square root of 2 times 3 plus 3. And does that equal? That's going to be 6 plus 3. And the square root of 6 plus 3 is the square root of 9. And 3 equals 3. So 3 works. Now let's try the negative 1. Negative 1. The square root of a number here, once you know the number, we used to say, if we're solving for x, we would have to say plus or minus the square root. But right here, when you're going to be taking the square root of a number, you can't take the square root of a negative number. I'm running out of space. Hold on. So 2 times negative 1 makes a negative 2 plus 3. So hold on. Negative 1, though negative's making me nervous, that's a negative 2 plus 3. Oh, see? You're going to end up with a positive 1, and the square root of positive 1 is positive 1. So you can't take the square root of a number and get a negative. So beware when it's negative, those are likely extraneous solutions. So 3 is our only possible solution for y, because the square root of 1 does not equal negative 1. And as we always do, we like to look at a real world scenario that uses an equation that has our concept of the day included in it. So if you're looking for the height of your free fall, this is the equation that you would use. T equals the square root of h over 4. All right, well, let's see what all we know about this equation. It says an object is dropped from an unknown height and it reaches the ground in 5 seconds. You use this equation where t is the time in seconds, okay, that's 5, and h is the height to find the height. So we're looking for height, so we're looking for h. So in this equation, we're going to replace the t with 5 seconds. So 5 equals the square root of h over 4. We are solving for h. Now we have to go back and use our knowledge about fractions. I've told you many times, if you don't like a fraction, you can undo fractions. Well, to get the square root of h by itself, I need to undo that it's being divided by 4. And the opposite of dividing by 4 is to multiply by 4. So this gives us 20 equals, and here you'll cancel out the square root of h. And how to undo a square root? Well, you need to square both sides. So this tells us h equals 20 squared is 400. So the height in feet would be 400 feet. Same equation, new amount of time. You try this one on your own. Okay, so for those of you who are staying with me and didn't just shut your iPad off just because I said try this one on your own and you thought I was finished and didn't wait to see. So for those of you who are sticking with me through the duration, I've worked out number 2's free fall problem for you. Check your work against mine. And now let's make sure you can do these on your own. Here's a little POD. So first thing tomorrow, I'm going to be checking that you've attempted your review problems, and I'm going to be checking for understanding of solving equations with radicals. So we call those radical equations. I'm going to be checking for your understanding of how to solve. Thank you, and have a great day.